Hey folks, I'm here to talk to you today about the Pottery Merit Badge. My name is Dick Heiser. I am a potter and I operate Edenton Bay Clay Works in Edenton, North Carolina. And I've been doing this for over 40 years, as well as some other things. But primarily, I've always been an artist and a potter, and I love it. I'm going to kind of break it down a little bit. I'm not going to go over necessarily the merit badge, okay? You can get the requirements online or you can get the book. But what I'm going to talk to you about is basically some of the things that we do here when it comes to ceramics. And that's right, ceramics and pottery both deal with clay. The words are interchangeable. I think people mostly believe pottery is made by hand and that ceramics are made in industry. Well, you can leave it at that if you want, but it's still the same thing. It's all clay. And that's where we're going to start a little bit. We're going to start with clay. Now I have here in my hand a little block of clay. It's nice, it's mushy. You can squeeze it, you can press on it, you can deform it. Nice wet clay. All right, that's where you start. Now, most of the clay you guys will probably use when you're doing this will come out of a plastic bag, which is fine. People buy clay these days because that's the way they do it. You can process your own clay. We have done workshops with the Boy Scouts at the Order of the Arrow conference before that we've actually dug clay at the site, made pieces, and fired them right there. Now that's quite a quick turnaround process, but it's a lot of fun and it's quite interesting for people to watch. But speaking of clay, I have a bowl here. This little bowl is made out of clay that was dug from our yard here in Edenton. Point is, you can make things out of native wild clay. People did that for thousands of years. One of the things we also do, besides making pieces, is we do repairs for people who have historic or let's call them sentimental pieces that they have broken. We're doing a restore right now on an 18th century milking pan that was found in the river near here. We have 3 pieces. Well, actually only 2, because the third piece is missing. So we're making a third piece to fit in, so when the whole thing's reassembled, it will look like it used to. Now, the repair piece will stand out because we obviously want people to know that was a repair. Okay, so clay, you can get clay from, like I say, right out of the ground. We're not going to get into testing clay, but just be aware that clay is everywhere. And here in the Edenton area, we have a lot of clay. We're a river sound area, so you can go along pretty much any riverbank and find clay. You dig down in our yard here, 6 inches, there's a bunch of clay. Could I use that clay? Absolutely. I just showed you the bowl. So clay is a natural material. It's not something that you have to buy. It is not toxic. It's basically powdered stone, for lack of a better phrase. Okay, so that's just a little introduction on clay. A little introduction on creativity. Fun. I teach, and I always tell my students that I'm going to show you some simple processes. You can take those and make them your own. And the more you get involved in this, the more you will realize that not only are these processes fun and they will evolve, but you can make things you never thought of. until that specific point. So I tell students there's 1,000 ways to do 1,000 things, and when you're done with that thousand, you will find there's another 1,000 on top of that. It's never ending. So it keeps you active, okay? Give you an idea now, just still on the clay thing. In the merit badge, there are 4 different processes they want you to use. One is called pinching, one is called coiling, one is slab building, and one is wheel throwing. Wheel throwing, that's your challenge, okay? Now, I do make pinch pots, and pinch pots are made simply by taking clay in your hand and working it with your fingers. And this is one of the little cups that we make. I know that's hard to see, it's a white clay. We make those for different things, particularly the Japanese tea ceremony. We also do slabs, and in this case, here's a slab box, and this box was built out of slabs of clay. And again, maybe a little difficult to see because of the white clay we use, and it's been colored. You can color things. There's a lot you can do. I don't have any coil pots. We don't do a lot of coil pots, but when we do, they're usually larger forms because we can roll out coils of clay and work them all together to make these big forms. And then finally, we throw on the wheel. Now, a lot of things are thrown on the wheel. We make these little coffee mugs. We make also bigger jars. And we make anything from sinks down to fountains, down to teacups, down to dinnerware. We also do, combining all of these, we do sculpture. Sculpture is a lot of fun. Now we're teaching a class coming up on garden sculpture at Picosan Arts. But that's not what we're talking about right now. We're talking about the merit badge. But this is just to give you a little bit of an idea about some of the forms and some of the things you can make. Now, we've talked about clay a little bit. I want to hit on safety, and we're also going to talk about firing, and I'm going to show you the kilns we use. And let's go on right now with safety. Safety, like I said, clay is non-toxic, pretty much. The clays that we use are non-toxic. They're basically clay. Clay is used in medicine, actually. So I'm not going to get into that. I don't want anybody going out eating clay, but people used to do that for their digestive system. So clay is non-toxic as long as it's wet. What you don't want to do is you don't want to breathe clay dust. So we clean our studio. Clay dust, like a lot of other things that are in this world, not a good thing to breathe. So you just want to make sure you keep things clean. Okay, so when it comes to safety, working with the clays, working with anything dry that's a powder, it's a good idea to wear a respirator or a mask. I wear a respirator because that's what I do. And it's also the safest for me when I'm working around dry materials. So we've kind of touched on a little bit on the clay, a little bit on safety. I could go on for hours, and I don't think you guys are going to sit there and listen to me rattle on for hours. What we're going to do is I'm going to take you around the studio a little bit, show you some of the things you can make or that we make. Currently, we have a lot of things that are out in the galleries, and then we're going to take a walk out to our kiln house. Now, kilns, we fire our ware in a gas-fired and an electric-fired kiln. I'll talk about kilns a little more when we get to that part. Okay, if you will bear with me, we're going to start a second leg of this video, and we're going to take a walk around the studio. All right, I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. And really, all I'm doing is showing you some of the pots that we have collected over the years. Yeah, these are old, some of them not so. But this point about this is there's a lot of things you can do with pottery, and pottery and clay work has been done for years and years and years. Yes, that is a clay boat and a clay Jeep. And we have more pottery working our way right around this collection. Okay. I want to point something out about historic pottery, and I'm going to leave this right here on this jar at this point. It goes back 3,000 years or more. One of the things that we use here, or we do, like I said, is we restore pieces, and we're restoring a piece for a gentleman right now. The piece was found in the Meherrin River. It's a milking pan from the 18th century. He does archaeological work. He also happens to have a Native American piece that is about 3,000 years old. Now, it was found in pieces. It was also found in the Meherrin River, but he was able to put it back together. He has almost all of the pieces. Okay, I'm going to come up here real quick. This is a boat. Yeah, believe it or not, made out of clay. Oh, and a trailer and a Jeep, and it was all made in 1975 when I was in graduate school. So that's my little brag for the day, and we'll leave it at that. Okay, so looking around in here, this is a studio space. This is where we make things. Potter's wheel, wear boards for stacking the ware when they come off the wheel, the tools, the clay. Yeah, I do make a little bit of a mess. This is all greenware up here, and by greenware, these are pieces that have been made, decorated, and are sitting waiting to fire. Now, here's that milking pan that came out of the Meherrin River, and there's a little piece right here that we have made that will fit into this area. The fun part about that is clay shrinks. So we had to make adjustments as this clay shrank so that we can make sure we have a good fit for the piece once it goes into the kiln. All right, we're going to move on out. Okay, this is our kiln house. Now, it's a little difficult to see because the space is a little bit tight, but here right in front of us is the gas-fired kiln that we built when we first opened Edenton Bay back in 2018. Yes, we build all our own kilns that are fired with either gas or wood. Back in Castle Hayne, North Carolina, before we moved here, we had a 2-chamber wood-fired kiln. And the way the gas kiln works is you have a series of burners here on this side. They're plumbed to a gas line and a regulator. The flame goes in the bottom of the kiln, and as it goes in the kiln, it will hit what's called a bag wall, which is very difficult to see due to lighting, and it will course around through the kiln, over the arch, down to the bottom, through a flue, and up and out the stack, which exits the roof. We have a damper on the kiln so we can control that flow. Now here in the bottom of the kiln, you can see something that's kind of gray. Well, that's a shelf. You don't want to put just one layer of mugs in here. That would be wasteful. So we use shelves made of silicon carbide, and then we use posts made of hard, high-duty fire brick, and we stack these shelves up and load our ware in on top of them. Once the ware is loaded, of course, now let me back up for a second. We load in here, this is ware that has been fired once. It's called bisque, and we do that in an electric kiln. I'll get to the electric kiln in a minute. And then the ware is taken back into the studio. We put the glaze on it, and then we bring it back out and load it into this kiln. Now out here right now, there are some pieces waiting. These have been glazed. They have not been fired yet. They will be fired hopefully the end of this month. So we will load this kiln along with a bunch of other ware. It takes about 80 to 90 pieces to fill the kiln up. Now, how do we know the temperature? Well, yeah, we use a pyrometer, but we also put these guys in. These are called pyrometric cones. Now, they melt at a specific temperature. They're kind of a guide to give us at least a relative space of temperature. The ones in this are a cone 8, 9, and 10. Well, what does cone 9, 8, 9, 10 mean? Basically, it means that when cone 10 goes down, which is the one here on the end, that means we've reached 2,380 degrees, thereabouts. And this is what they look like when they're all melted. Whoops, there we go. So when they're all melted, that's the temperature we're shooting for, 2,380 degrees. It takes us about 8 hours to 9 hours to fire a gas load in this kiln. Now, we also have an electric kiln. The electric kiln is right here. Now, the electric kiln's a little bit simpler. I have to tend the gas kiln. The electric kiln I tend as well. I'm going to open the lid up and kind of get an idea. It has electric elements. It has a control panel. And that control panel, thanks to modern technology, is computerized. So, I can enter a program to tell the kiln how fast I want it to climb, to what temperature I want it to go, and the kiln will actually handle all of that for me. So that's really kind of good. Now, you might wonder, with all that heat inside this building, which you can see, not a very big building, where does it go? Well, you notice that hole in the back? That's the kiln house back door. We have a set of barn doors on the back, a set of doors on the end. We have windows, and we have fans to ventilate the space. In the winter, it's not too bad out here. It's rather comfortable. But in the summer, it gets a tad warm, usually about 115 degrees with everything open. Because even though this kiln is insulated with 9 inches of fire brick and then an over insulation, it still gets hot. Heat has to have somewhere to go. So when we do these firings, we have to think ahead to make sure that what we're doing is actually what we want to do and be safe again about doing it. Okay, we're going back in for... Okay, well, we're back inside. A couple closing thoughts. One, what does it take to be a potter? Well, you can buy clay, you can buy glaze, you can buy a kiln, you can put it all together and you can call yourself a potter. But it doesn't quite work that way. I do run into people that want to do clay work, but they don't want to take the time to become educated about how to fire, how to dry, how to decorate, just basic, I want to say, rules that keep them from making mistakes, okay? So if you are ever interested in becoming or pursuing ceramics, pottery as a career, there's a few things to keep in mind. One, clay comes from the ground. It's good to have a little bit of geology, and that's science. Two, we don't buy our glazes from a company. We make all of our own glazes. So we make them with feldspar, we make them with ball clay, we have silica, we have red iron oxides. We have different chemicals that we combine in specific ratios to make glazes. It's not a bad idea to have a little bit of chemistry in your background. Oh, and did I mention math? Math is also not bad to have, so you can figure out the ratios you need to do these glazes. So we've hit on 3 things right there. Now, remember we were walking around out there looking at the kilns, and I said we build those kilns. Well, the gas-fired kiln is a catenary arch, just like the arch in St. Louis, self-supporting. It's not a bad idea to have a little bit of an idea about physics and a little bit of an idea about how heat works, so that you have a concept about what's going on so you don't make mistakes. Point is, it requires some study. Yes, it did not happen overnight. So there's a lot more involved to being, or in my mind, to being a potter than there is to being just somebody who, say, makes clay. So that said, if you decide you want to do this, we have this thing now called the internet. I would encourage you, if you want to do this, to go to school, to take art, and it can be beside, you don't have to do anything just pottery, you can do other things. Learn your science. Think about going to college or community college. And because of the internet, you can find residencies, you can find courses, you can find places you can work with practicing potters who do hire an assistant. We don't anymore. We've done that. We've had an apprentice, and I've had studio assistants, but we've kind of downsized our operation here from when we moved. So I really don't have that much going on here at this point. But it's just a course you can pursue. Now, one thing about pottery, and I keep talking about pottery, but let's talk about ceramics generally. So we've made mugs. We've talked about sinks. Sinks. Well, what if you decide you want to get into ceramic engineering? People make sinks. They make toilets. They're all made of clay. What about space shuttles? High alumina heat shield plates or blocks, ceramic. So there is a lot more, and this range goes from, again, the simple coffee mug all the way up to going to outer space. So there's more involved with ceramics and clay than just making pots, okay? So it's worthwhile for you to look at if that's your interest. Not trying to push you there, just saying there's a lot out there. Read up on it, look into it. Okay, so we've kind of covered clay and introduction, just touched on forming methods. And we've also done, looked at the kilns where we fire the work. If you have work that you make and you don't need anymore, or you don't want, if you don't fire it, you can always put the clay in a bucket of water and you have clay again. Once it's fired, like these, it's yours, okay? So anyway, like I said, I could talk for hours on this stuff, but I'm trying to keep it a little bit succinct. So, but yeah, enjoy the merit badge. Also, if you go to YouTube, go to Pocosin Arts. They are Pocosin Arts School of Fine Crafts in Columbia, North Carolina. They have tutorial videos on different things. I've done some. We have other potters who've done some. Especially in these days where we are all socially distanced and kind of isolated. There's a lot on YouTube that you can use to see how people do specific processes. Okay, again, I'm Dick Heiser. I hope you enjoyed this rambling rant about clay and ceramics. And good luck with your Pottery Merit Badge. And if you get to Edenton, please look us up. We're here on South Oakham Street, Edenton Bay Clay Works. Have a great summer, and remember, be prepared.